Today, we are modding a Wii to have an HDMI port. I don't sound super thrilled because this is the second time I'm attempting this, and I know what's about to come. Couple things before we get started. One, do not buy this kit if you do not have the right model. If you couldn't guess, the first time I tried this, I did not have the right model. I did not know that until I tore it all the way down. And if you've never torn down a Wii before, it is annoying. 11 different types of screws. Thank you, Nintendo. I believe they're both either Phillips or Tri-Wing, but they're different sizes, different lengths, different types, different colors. It's annoying. Some of them I can't even access with my good screwdrivers. Thankfully, I've got these pieces of crap, but these don't come in the Wii HDMI kit or in the new shell that I bought. So if you don't have nice, somewhat thin screwdriver bits, good luck. But before we get too far, I'll show you how to figure out if you have the right model or not. I'm going to put my new shell in HDMI kit off to the side. This also requires an extensive amount of soldering and trimming, so if you can't do that or you don't feel comfortable doing that, probably not the mod for you. But I bought this from Goodwill for $40. No cables, no controllers, just that. But shout out to the guy in the Eugene Goodwill, or I guess the Green Acres Goodwill if you're local. He was actually kind enough to lend me a Phillips head to open up a bunch of Wii battery doors to see if I have, or if they had, a compatible model, and they do. Take our Phillips bit and we'll just unscrew that and take out the clock battery. Now, if you flip it around here and you look through this slot, it's kind of hard to see, but there will be a number for you that I can't even see because I need a flashlight on it. And in the bottom right corner, like over here, kind of by the screw, but on the motherboard, there'll be a number. Mine says 40. If it says 40, you're good. If it says any of these numbers, you're good. But if you have a launch model like I have, or the other one that I bought, that won't work. It has to be a fairly late revision, which a lot of the black and red ones will be the right revision, but those are kind of more sought after when they have the GameCube ports on them and a cool color. So good luck, honestly. That alone is kind of enough for me to be like, I don't think this mod's worth it. We'll see how good it looks in the end, but you know, you can watch my full review on the main channel that will be up at the same time as this video. So let's get started with tearing this apart. I am going to be following the teardown guide from iFixit. It is not the best. It is very old. I don't like the teardown from them. I don't like a ton of teardowns from them. They leave out a lot of information and they don't go like over how to put it back together, which I find annoying. But one thing I do know how to do very well is remove these doors. You just take them, you open it, and you pull up. One of the sides will be a little bit temperamental. You just got to wiggle it as you pull and it should be fine. And eventually it'll come out. You don't need to worry about taking this door out unless, you know, you might want to open it up. Make sure you don't have any SD cards in there. I don't think it'll matter, but just in case you might break it, might want to remove that now. Let's say Nick was the guy at Goodwill that was nice enough to let me open up a bunch of these, but because I think he did say he tested it. He looks like a Nick too, so we'll go with that. Anyways, let's start up top. We've got 1, 2, 3 Phillips head screws to take care of here. These screws already look different from each other. That's crazy. And there's really no rhyme or reason to like the color coordination of the screws or anything. So having a mat like this where you can lay out exactly where these were taken out of, not exactly out, but you know what I mean, somewhat easy to understand where these came from is kind of huge. So then we can just literally lift this plate up and pull it out like that and set that off to the side. I'm not going to be reusing this shell, so I'm just going to throw everything off to the side. That also reveals 1, 2 Tri-Wings and 1, 2 more Phillips heads. Isn't that fun? We're going to be going back and forth between Tri-Wing and Phillips a lot today. I'm sure you don't all have the same mat that I have, but if you do, or if you want this mat, link in the description, I'm going to try and keep all the external screws as high up as possible, or as close to the edges as possible, because there's also a lot of internal screws that we have to take care of. I can tell you right now, I will not be offering this as a service on my website. Don't care how good it looks. Don't care how much money you want to give me. It's not worth my time. It's too much time. Dang, these are some big screws too. Then we can flip her over, and not all of these rubber feet or squares need to come off. I don't even remember from a week ago when I tried to do this before, which ones I do and don't take off. So I'm just going to remove them all for you. So that way, if you are reusing your shell and you want to know which ones to remove and which ones to not remove, to keep it as clean as possible, I will let you know in a second. But I'm just going to remove them all. This one here, we're going to have to remove. I like using an X-Acto knife to get under there. That's a clean way to remove them. But sometimes like this, it's going to be a little stickier. And I actually got underneath the tape there. But we'll have to remove that one as well. We got one tri-wing, one Phillips. Isn't that awesome? Then we can get under this one. And I kind of messed that one up pretty good, which we also need to remove that. I'm going to say we do need to remove this one, but the other two we don't. I think there's only one of these three that we need to remove. Yeah, that one we need to remove, but I don't think we need to remove these ones. Could be completely wrong though. Nope, we did not need to remove that one. So I'm going to place that one back. And this one we also did not need to remove. Okay, so do not remove these two, remove the rest of them. Make sense? Cool. It's also easier to remove if you have like a blow dryer or something to heat up the adhesive as you remove it. But I'm going to take these two tri-wings out. Don't worry, there's more rubber feet to remove. So don't go putting your X-Acto knives or whatever you're using. Don't put them away. You can flip back over to the Phillips head and we can take these two bigger ones out. And then there's a smaller black one over here. Just on this bottom exterior piece, we've got 3 different types of screws. Love it, Nintendo. Love, love, love it. Over on this side, there are no screws, so don't need to worry about that. And no screws over here. So that just leaves, there's also no screws over here, but that just leaves this. So we are gonna have to remove these 2 pieces here and this one. And I don't remember which rubber feet. I want to say these ones you don't since they're so close to these, but Nintendo's stupid. So we're just going to remove this one. There's a hole in there. There's going to be a screw in that hole. And then we're going to remove that one. There we go. Okay. And this is where I need these extra bits here, or these extra screwdrivers. This is a tri-wing, these 2 right here. So I'm going to use my tri-wing. Actually, they're all tri-wings here, but I have to use my crappy small tri-wing bit here because it's the only one I have that's skinny enough that fits in this hole. Skinny and long enough. Because I can get my iFixit bit fit in there, it's just not long enough. And then I'm not going to bother using that screwdriver for these other 2 because I can access these with this bit. Got 1 and 2. I didn't quite have that one all the way undone, but I was able to get the iFixit bit in there enough. I'm going to just combo those together. Same thing here. I didn't get it all the way undone, but it's unscrewed enough that I can actually reach it with the iFixit bit. Cool. I'm going to shift all of these over here because I want to try and keep all of these screws, all the exterior screws along that. And from here, we should be able to pop this off. For me, I've got this tested sticker that I can peel off just to get the front panel off, maybe. Or I can use my extremely long fingernails to just cut through it. How about that? Because I don't like to cut my fingernails when I know I'm going to mod stuff. And I've been really delaying this nail trimming. This is too long. It'll help me do this. From here, we can unplug this. I should have warned, be very careful when you're taking this out. From here, I believe we can just take this part off, or maybe it's this way. Yeah, this part should come off the top. And this part, there's nothing attached to it, so we don't need to be careful. But before we just toss this off to the side, if you are using a new shell, you are going to want to take this piece out here, this grill cover. Take that out. We will need that later. If you're reusing the shell, just leave it be. You might want to clean it off. There might be like a layer of dust on it. Otherwise, I'm just going to toss this off to the side. I do not need it. From here, it is going to get so much more complicated. It is not funny. Just to remove the screws, I'm also going to take this stuff out of the way, and I'm gonna cover up my X-Acto knife because I think we're done with it for now, at least. There are a couple of screws we need to remove if we want to just take this off. We can slide this metal piece off. It might get a little bit stuck, but this just comes right off. You'll probably want to save that for later. But from here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips heads that we need to take care of. And I'm actually going to swap over to a PH1 because I think that's going to make it a little easier. And 4. Since this is for the disk drive, I'm actually going to put these over here on my magnet just to keep them out of the way. They're kind of big considering the rest of these screws, and I believe these are the only style ones that we have inside, so I can pretty easily determine that those are for the disk drive. From here, I'm gonna have to awkwardly show you that we have a ribbon cable and then a set of wires plugged in to the disk drive. Assuming you want your disk drive to work, we're gonna carefully pull out these wires. I know there's not a good angle of that. Be very careful when you do that. There's no latch for these wires, so you can just pull it out. Still be very careful. And don't let your disk drive fall over like I just did. From here, there is a latch on this one. We can just lift up, and that should slide out super easily. Put this off to the side. I will be using that later, so I'm not going to throw it away. According to Nick's testing, that works, so we're good. I'm going to be honest. We're pretty much just going to need to remove every single screw you see. So if you want to, just start removing screws. Make sure you carefully place them somewhere where you won't lose it or where you'll remember to put it back. I will show you where the hidden screws are when they come to them. You're just going to hear me say here, 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 here a bunch in a row like I've done in the past. You can follow along or just remove every screw you see. There's only a few that we don't need to remove. Let's start with these two here. And most of the time, I'm not going to bother showing the part where I unscrew it just to make this video go a little bit faster because this is going to be a long video. I know. And I believe all of the internal ones are Phillips screws. So we should be able to just keep with our PH1 bit, but you never know. There are 1, 2, 3 along the controller ports. Even the controller ports have different length ones. We've got 1, 2 little black ones here, another third one right there. All those are kind of hard to see. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Phillips heads that I see. Then we've got 2 more hard to see ones in these holes here. Then we've got 1 over here by the Wi-Fi antenna or the Bluetooth antenna. I'm not sure which one that is. Might be a little hard to get out. There is a hidden one underneath here, but we can get that in a second. We just have to remove this whole thing here. So we can remove the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Phillips heads along this edge. We can also go ahead and unplug the fan. We're going to need to unscrew this one here and then this one right here. Then we should be able to lift this whole assembly. I still have some screws left in because they wouldn't come out earlier. I'm just going to leave these 2 for the fan in the fan. Why not? Make it a little easier on myself. And then I will take out this corner one on this black piece because I don't want to lose it. Then that exposes this one here, and we can lift this black piece up, and that exposes this one and this one. And I think that is actually all of them. So I'm going to just start removing pieces. Oh, no, just kidding. Of course, if you can manage to remove this black piece here, and don't lose the nut that just came flying out of it. I don't know how to put that back in. Oh, like that. That'll fall out a bunch. There are 2 more Phillips heads down here. Fun. Now I think we can actually remove everything now. Nope, just kidding. Once we remove the shielding here, I said once we remove the shielding here, careful of those cables for the disk drive, that off the side, we can take these last 4 screws out for the heat sink. This is where the long Phillips head screw comes into play because I can't access these without this, because the fins are too dang tall. I'm going to use the other magnet spot for these screws here, because again, they're the last 4 screws, so it'll be pretty obvious to me which ones I do and don't need in the end. We do not need to actually remove the heatsink from the CPU, and unless you really want to replace the thermal paste, I would just leave it alone. I am going to pop this off, make it a little easier on myself, so I don't have to hold these with the motherboard. We can take this out, assuming that you're gonna not reuse the shell. Sure, we'll take that foam with it. And now you will need to reuse this stuff, I do believe, at least some of these things in the new shell if you're doing a new shell. So I'm just gonna leave that off to the side. But from there, we can finally get out our mod kit. This is the number that we were looking at earlier, just so you know, over by the battery thing. 40 is my number, which over here on this side, we can actually see our revision in full instead of just the little code. And as long as you see one of these codes on this spot of your motherboard, you're good to go. We can keep going. If it doesn't, stop right now. I'm sorry you just had to tear apart a Wii, but it won't work with this HDMI kit as of right now. Probably never will, unless they make another one. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and lift this bail up to remove this ribbon cable for now. And I'm gonna pull this set of cables out for now as well. Oh, my heatsink is wiggling because I just don't want to bend any of this stuff when we're doing the soldering over here. The first time I did this, I did not use a microscope. I'm going to use a microscope this time around just so you guys can see it easier, so I can see it easier. Woohoo. But like I said, since I've done this before, or at least attempted this before, some of these things are going to have some solder on them. I tried to clean it up as best I could. I'm not even sure if my little ribbon cable will work anymore. This thing, because I had a hard time removing it and it's pretty singed, as you can tell. But I'm hoping that it still works. If not, I have to get a new kit. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So one of the first things we're gonna need to do is solder this thing onto this thing. It should line up pretty darn well. And we're just gonna go ahead and add solder to each of these pins. Pretty simple. I do believe the board comes like this and you have to chomp it right there. I believe that is where the mark was. That is what you need to do. I already did that and I don't have that footage anymore. I'm very sorry. I spent 2 hours on that. That's a lot of footage in space that I can't use. So I had to delete it. But I'm going to take this, and before we get the microscope out, I'm just gonna solder this on. It is not that hard to see, pretty straightforward. So we'll do it without the microscope, but for the ribbon cable part, we will definitely whip out the microscope. So I'm going to turn my iron to 330 Celsius. You can do it a little warmer, a little cooler. I wouldn't go below 300. I like 330. It's kind of my sweet spot, especially for older solder. Higher temperatures are going to work better. And since there's like a lot of metal to this, it cools a lot easier. So even 350 might not be a bad idea. I'm actually going to do it to 350 because I had my hot air gun at max trying to remove this thing. So I'm going to put flux on each of these pieces. I'm actually going to even remove them, put some flux below, and have some flux above. Flux is your friend, not food. Yeah, it's just going to be a lot easier to solder this down with plenty of flux down. So I'm going to start by holding this over this point and flooding it with some solder. There we go. Then I'm going to go to the farthest pin over here and flood it with some solder. Then I'm just going to go in and fill the rest of those holes up with, you guessed it, solder. Whew. Okay, we are locked in there. My board looks a little crooked. That's all right. I'll have to trim it to fit anyways, so not too worried about that one. Plus, it's probably pretty warped from me installing it and then reinstalling it. So it should look something like that when you're done. I'm gonna clean my iron, and for now, I'm going to unplug it. I'm gonna go grab the microscope now. Now we are going to need to remove capacitor 43, which is right here, but you can't really tell where that is. It is right next to the AVE RVL chip. This is where the bottom of the writing is facing, and this is kind of like middle front of the motherboard. This is like in between the ports of the HDMI port that we just installed and the, I think that's the AV out over here. And to remove that, I'm going to add a bit of flux. And I'm turning my iron down to 330 because I don't want to burn the ribbon cable that we're about to use. Ribbon cables are very fragile. So anyways, to remove the capacitor, I'm just going to simply put my iron on top of the capacitor, and I'm going to flood it with solder, and then hopefully just move this out of the way, kind of. trying to get it to stick to my tip and just take it off that way. And we're going to want to clean this up as we've got some bridging there. So what I'm going to do to do that is I'm going to clean my iron's tip. Then I'm going to get the flux back out and just wipe it around till nothing's bridging. And I'm trying to clean it up too well. But there we go. That is all peachy keen. From here, we can get out our little orangey yellow ribbon cable. And thankfully, I have some tips since I've tried to do this once already. We're going to be soldering to that chip that I just mentioned earlier, the AVERVL chip. And over here, we're going to place the ribbon cable. Yours will look hopefully way cleaner than mine. We're going to place it in a way that these two bottom pins right here line up with these two pads here. Not my best job, but just for sake of instruction, just to show you, lined up slightly better than that. But those two pins with that, and then all of these pins should line up on this side of the chip. And then over here, it's lifted up, but these 5 will line up with the 5 on the very right end. I highly recommend doing this end or this end first to line those up. And that should leave all of these to line up perfectly. Now, yours will not have any solder pre-tinned on it. It really does not matter. Might just want to leave it untinned unless you think it's better to do it with it pre-tinned. It's up to you, dealer's choice. Again, I just tried to install this once before, so that's why mine's dingy and disgusting. I'm going to start with these two up here, just because it's going to be the easiest to remove if I do need to adjust it. But also, I'm kind of scared that one of these or both of these are no longer good. So that's why I'm starting with them to make sure it is okay before I waste too much time. I'm going to put some flux down on both the ribbon cable and the pins. And I'm just going to take my time to try and solder down all of these pretty darn well. Oh, also, I do not have much, if any at all, on my tip. If your ribbon cable does not have any pre-tinned pads, then you're going to want to have just the tiniest bit of solder, and I really mean the tiniest bit of solder on your iron. You don't want to bridge anything. You don't want to put too much solder on these pins to bridge it. So just be very careful. And remember, these are very fragile. Wow, that went so much easier than the first time. But I'm going to double check everything real quick. Make sure it all looks good. We'll start over here. That one looks pretty darn good. This looks pretty darn good. Let's keep going, keep checking. That one right there looks a little iffy to me just because it doesn't look like it transfers from that pin very well. I'm just going to go ahead and touch it up right there. That looks a little bit nicer. It looks like there's less there, but it does look like the connection's nicer. Same thing with that one there, but yeah, you know what? Let's just do it real quick. And we'll keep going, keep checking. That looks good. That one looks like it could have a little bit more solder on that second to the last one. And then now it's got a bridge there, and we're good. Everything, just double check real quick. I am very shaky because I'm very nervous. And we've got those two there that look pretty darn good as well. Nice. Let's go. Woo! Okay. I think we're done with the microscope, but let's just keep going. Man, I feel good about that one. Now, if we go over to this spot over here, I know we are very zoomed in, but we can go ahead and put the rest of this board over here. That should line up pretty darn well with all those pins in those holes. And going back over here, we can see that that lines up beautifully. Look at that. See, that was my problem with the last one, is these did not line up at all. I think we will keep the microscope out for this because we don't want any bridging to happen over here. So we'll keep this out for now to keep an eye on that. And I'm going to actually start by soldering these pins in here, doing the same thing I did before. I'm going to remove it for a second, and I'm going to put a bunch of flux down underneath. I don't think we need to hit all of those, but just in case. And I'll also put some flux over on the ribbon cable. And I'm actually going to do that real quick too. We're going to go back over the ribbon cable real quick. So I'm going to pre-tin these pads. So I'm going to get my soldering iron out and just add solder to all of these pads. Just going to make life a little easier. We got a little bridging there. It's fine. But because of my first attempt, this is not going so well. It does not want to stick fully to a couple of these pads. That's fine. The most important thing is that it does get at least part of it, and we don't accidentally remove or bridge this capacitor over here. So now that all of these pads are tinned, we're going to move back over to this, our board back down. And once again, make sure that everything lines up over on the ribbon cable. I'm not going to show that because I'm sure enough of you are nauseated. And I'm going to put flux over the top of all these pins, even though we've got flux on the bottom. Just makes things easier because we do have to go through all of these holes with solder. Starting with the big boy one. Nice, looks good. I'm gonna go all the way over to this one. I'm gonna kind of hold the board down with my tweezers. That probably doesn't look the best on camera. I'm also going to up this back up to 350 as I fill in the rest of these holes, just because, again, it's easier to fill in these holes. It's easier to heat up these big pieces of metal when it's a higher temperature. The solder won't melt as easily with big pieces of metal like this, so that's why we're doing it this way. Then I'm just going to go through and fill in all of these holes. And looking over all of my solder balls there, they look pretty darn good. It's just hard to tell if we actually got through to those bottom pins. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my iron. I'm just going to hold it over a couple of these pins, let it melt a little bit, let it bubble over. Don't hold it for too long because we don't want to burn anything, but make sure that the heat is actually going through to those pins. This one's probably just to hold it center, but I just want to make sure that we're actually melting the solder on those pins below us. And I'm just going to do this to all of those pins real quick. Try to only do it to like 2 max at a time. 1, you don't want a big bridge like that, but 2, the more pins you solder at the same time, the less heat gets to them. I would really try to just do it to 1 pin at a time, but like if you have an iron like mine, where the tip is a little big, it's kind of hard to not hit another one at the same time. And this one, I'm pretty sure, is just to keep it steady and secure. We can still make sure that one's flat. Make sure nothing is bridging before we move on. Everything looks good. We can go back over to where the ribbon cable meets our new board, and it looks a little off, which is a little concerning, but when we hold it down, let me focus on the ribbon cable here. We should be able to hold down our board and line it up, starting with the most off one, which is going to be our bottom one here. I'm going to load this baby up with flux down low and up high, and I'm going to put my thumb over this spot, or just any finger over this spot down low, and I'm just going to line up this G with that bottom spot down there, hopefully link those together. Woo! And then I'm going to go up to the top here, to the very top one, use my tweezers to hold this end down. I'm going to solder these two together. And then now we've got our 2 endpoints locked down. We should be able to just add solder and fill in these spots along the way. Be very careful not to bridge anything, but it's okay if you do. We can fix that later. And also be careful not to remove that capacitor there when you're going over these spots on the board over here, because I know my iron doesn't leave me that much room. You can see that I'm kind of wiggling that capacitor, and you can also see that my iron is dirty, so I'm going to clean that real quick, and then I'm going to try and add a little bit of solder to this point here, because I'm trying to connect that like that. Beautiful. Those other 2 look connected. That looks connected. That looks bridged. So let's clean the iron. Let's put some more flux down, and the first 2 are unbridged. The second 2, maybe. Clean the iron again, a little more flux. And that, I think, is just the flux being flux. I don't think those are bridged anymore. We can continue on looking. All of these look good so far, except for those 2, and those 2 look bridged. Okay, so 4 out of the last 5 are not how we want them. So I'm going to take this bridge over here. We're going to put more flux down, shocker. And I am going to try and take the solder that is extra from that bridge and move it over to these guys. And I just kind of messed that up a little bit. I'm going to put more pressure down on the board next to these solder points. I think I need to get more flux. I think I need to get more solder on my iron. I'm going to clean my tip again. Added a little too much here, but we're just trying to get these to connect. We can deal with the bridging in a bit. So those are connected, those are bridged, and those are bridged. But if we clean our iron, put more flux down, should be able to disconnect those bridges just like that. And kind of made that one worse, but we can clean our iron again and disconnect that bridge. And all of those look pretty darn good. This one we could actually test if we want to. You can put a multimeter on the ribbon cable spot and put it next to the hole up on the board and test those all individually. I'm not going to do that because it looks pretty good to me, and I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now that we've got all of that soldered down, we're going to go all the way over to this controller port for the GameCube over here. And we're going to solder a wire to TP27, just right there. My heatsink just came off on its own. Nice. Don't know if that'll be easier or harder since this board is a little wobbly. This kit does not include any wires for you. So hopefully you have some wires. I have a big bundle of them that I got for cheap on Amazon. I'll link them down below. They're pretty small wire. They're like 30 gauge, I think. And we can cut that off, strip those ends, put some flux down, add the solder the wire, and we're going to solder it to pad. It literally says pad right over here. I am going to add some flux, shocker, solder that one down to pad. I did make it a little long, but I'm fine with that. And that's shockingly it for soldering. I thought there's going to be 2 more wires for the ground and 3.3 volts, but no. So I could make this shorter, or I'm going to do it the lazy way. Get some Kapton tape out and tape it down so it's not over any screw posts. Cool. Now the last part to this mod before we can actually test it is taking the included ribbon cable, not throwing it down like that, but we're going to plug it in here and here, both with the blue side up. And we're going to want to very carefully, don't crease it, but like fold it so it can actually bend like that. Just a light crease, I guess. If you like actually fully crease it, then you might break the connections. That will not be good. But we're going to lift that up. We're going to lift that up. And again, both ends, blue side up. I'm going to use my fingernail to push that blue part all the way up before I lock it down. Hopefully it's all even. Then do the same thing over here. Plug it in. Make sure it's all the way up against there. Lock it down. Make sure it looks even. And from here, we should be able to go ahead and plug in our Wii and test to make sure everything is hunky-dory. Okay, after a bit of a scare there, I actually did everything properly. It works. One thing you'll want to do when you test it is plug this in. The Wi-Fi antenna stuff, plug that in. I'm sure it's just like the DS Lite where the BIOS is in here because nothing displayed, nothing happened when I plugged it in just like this. But once I had this plugged in, it fired right up with the boot screen. So we're good. From here, we're actually going to do the trimming. So I recommend getting all of the electronics and stuff out of the way because we're going to make a lot of dust. So anything you don't want covered in dust, get it out of the way. I'm going to get the new shell out. I'm going to remove these pieces because we don't need them until the very end. And the trimming for this is actually pretty easy. We might not create much dust. Still a little bit for like the fine tuning, but I'm going to try my best to make this as pretty as possible. Mine is covered in plastic wrap. That's fine. I'm going to take the smaller half like this. This is going to be kind of hard to see blue on blue, but we see our cut off corner here. We're going to be on the farthest post over here. We're going to take our flush cutters and we're going to cut right up against the screw post without cutting the screw post. Just snip it and then remove this piece of plastic. Try your best to. Ow! That flew into my hand with a lot of force and hurt. I'm going to go ahead and slide this piece out because we don't need that yet either. But we can go ahead and clean this as well. Just make it nice and flat. Try not to scratch this too much, but I don't think it needs to be perfectly flat. Then we can grab our motherboard and place it in there gently just to line everything up and then see where we need to cut on this. And honestly, we don't. It doesn't look like we need to cut there at all. I don't know if these aftermarket shells are just like ready for an HDMI mod or what, but that doesn't look like we have to do any trimming. Okay, I'll just cut it. So what I'm going to do to mark it is I'm going to take my X-Acto knife and just mark a little bit of a cut there, and I'll just do it up until that line. Then we can remove that. I'm gonna try to do it with flush cutters. I'm gonna zoom out here. And I just had a nice gash in that. Nice. At least not in a gash in me. I'm just gonna get the file out to sand this. I had a file out already. It was just hidden. And we can line it up there. It really doesn't look like it's any better. I'm gonna snip off. There's like this little tiny post next to it that I'm gonna snip off. And maybe that's in our way. I don't think it's gonna make a difference if it's there or not. So put that down, and it looks like we're a little bit closer to that screw post now. I'm just gonna sand up against this edge a little bit more. And that's about as good of a hole as I'm gonna get there. So I'm gonna wipe this area down real quick because it's got some flux on it. Even though all things considered, this has been a pretty clean mod. And then we can take our top half, we can put it over the top and see that, yep, we definitely need to make a cut here. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to score the edge here where we need to cut to. And I'm gonna hope that I don't just break this off here. Oh, and it does. It definitely does. Please don't break it too much. That went flying. I'm gonna make this a little cleaner. Hopefully. We can put this back down. We can put this back down. And we're good, baby. Good. Now we just have to put it back together. So I'm going to take the top half of the shell, put it off to the side. I'm going to wipe this up real quick and try to figure out how to put this back together. Honestly, because I'm not really sure, I think I'm just going to do a time lapse putting this all back together because I really don't know what goes where and all that junk. We can also take our little black piece that we took out at the very beginning and slot that in right there. And now we should be able, if we slot it the correct way, we should be able to slot this on the very top. Oh, wait, hold up. I mean, I guess to make it look cooler, we could leave this off, but it just slots on top. And honestly, I'm kind of tempted to just leave it off. I think it looks much cooler without it. You definitely do want the metal on this one, unfortunately, because otherwise you won't be able to screw in a lot of the external screws. I slotted this on the incorrect way, so you'll want to slot it on the correct way. It'll look like that, and then we can slot the top back on, and everything should click into place. Now I'm going to put that off to the side for a second. For those who are using a new shell, we're going to transfer all of these into our new front half. I'm just going to put all those screws off to the side because I don't think any of those are going to be really helpful for us. I'm just going to reuse the screws we got because we've got 1, 2, and 3. We can just take this whole assembly out, really? Okay, cool. That's sick. I don't even have to reuse the other stuff. You can swap out the new ones. They do give you a new color matched one with this. I'm just going to leave the white on there just because it seems like it might be a bit of a pain to remove. And there's really no point in removing it. So I'm just going to reuse this. And then we can put the new buttons in. So we've got our reset button right here that we can snap into place. Maybe. Does it not snap? No, it just rests. Okay. We can rest it there. We can take our eject button, slot that down there. We can take our reset button and slot that in there. And then we can take our power button and assemble it, because apparently it's not assembled. We're gonna have to kind of press this in. There we go. It's kind of loose. We can slot that. Yep, it's loose again. Slot that into position. Make sure they're all lined up there. and that's falling apart. So I guess, nope, I'm still not going to do that. I'm going to drop this into position. I'm just going to flip this over. Kind of ruined our placements there, just to make sure this is in position. Make sure it looks like it lines up, because we do want our discs to actually go through there. Then we can put these back into position. Our power button, our sync button, the rest of our power button, our reset button, and our eject button. Then we should be able to flip it around so it says SD there. I'm going to just flip it around and hopefully slot all of those in fairly easily. And then we can put our 3 screws back in. Okay, home stretch, people. Home stretch. Put that off to the side. We should be able to plug this in like so. Only goes in one way, so do not force it. Make sure these wires are not in the way of the disk drive. Might as well peel these back now, because we're going to have to peel them back in a second. But should be able to pop that into place. And that's why we want those sheets of metal in. So at least that top piece you do want it in. Let's just pretend like I had this right the whole time. Now we can screw this one in there. We can put all of our feet on, which I don't think any of these actually have any double-sided tape on them. I'm going to say no, they do not. I like the black pads better anyways, so you can either put your own double-sided tape on these. Oh wait, no, it's in the sticker pack here. It's really annoying that they don't put the tape on the rubber feet, but they are over here if you want to use the white ones or whatever color is included with your shell. I'm just going to reuse the black ones, honestly, because I think it's going to look cooler. We just need to put this one in over here. Just pop it in, and then it should lock in. Same thing with the big one. Pop them in, lock it in. Pop and lock and polka dot it. And that is our Wii with an HDMI port fully installed. There's the front. There's our top. Here's the bottom. Here is our HDMI port. Side view. And the mod view. It looks pretty cool, not gonna lie. But this was annoying as heck to install, and you have to have the right model. I will see you over on the TV for the software side of things. Woohoo! Okay, this has been a nightmare. What you're seeing right now is the capture feed directly from the mod we just installed. I haven't even gotten into Wii Sports yet, because just to get this to work on the capture card, I had to use an HDMI splitter. Yes, as far as I'm aware, this has copyright protection on this cheap mod. What? It's just like the PS3, where you have to use a splitter, a certain type of splitter that doesn't have the stupid copyright protection crap on it, and that's the only way you're going to get footage off of it. Now, plugging it straight into the TV with HDMI is going to work just fine. Another thing, this mod is run off of GC Video, which is an open source software as far as I know. And to use it, you kind of need a remote, an IR remote, that they do not include. I have one, my Bitfunks or Kaiko or whatever one. My Kaiko HDMI adapter for the GameCube, that remote works just fine for it, because it's the same mod theoretically, just packaged differently. So I can control this menu with the same remote, because look at it, GC Video. And you may notice that the feed is a little jittery. I don't know how to fix that other than turning the line doubler off. I don't know what the line doubler does. I thought that's what made it more crisp. Looks better with the line doubler off, in my opinion. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it's just my TV. I'm like having a hard time seeing the fairly small picture on my capture software. But other than the jitteriness, it doesn't really look any different. It's still going to be at 480i. It is still not like upscaling really anything. It is pretty much just sending us the feed. Now, obviously in the in and out on the bottom, you're seeing higher numbers on the out than the in. So I guess you could call this upscaling. I feel like it's more just stretching the image to a more reasonable number than 456 by 686. But anyways, I've looked through so many of these settings trying to like figure out like which thing is going to make it not shake, but there's a lot of settings in here, a lot of which I don't understand. I just don't really care. But if you know GC video, or if you just want to look up GC video, then you can look up all the settings and stuff that has to do with this. I'm just going to jump into Wii Sports. I'm just going to do a quick round of tennis. We'll go with guess C. Do a single game here because, like I said, I'm not going to spend much time here. Oh, God, we've got Matt. Instantly got the good serve, and boom. That girl could not handle it. I already forgot her name. Miyu. Oh, dude, Matt can't even handle this. Wow. Okay. I didn't get the good serve that time. What the? Okay, that was delayed. Didn't get the serve there either. Oh, we got a game on our hands. Okay. Oh, and can I win it here? Wow, that was pathetic, Matt. I thought Matt was supposed to be good. I know it's because I'm at like level 0. Oh man, I almost let that one go. And GG no re. Look at that. I win. No way. Wow, look at that. That's crazy. Okay. Did you notice that I swapped out to a different HDMI adapter? Stop right now and tell me in the comments at what point do you think I swapped to the other HDMI adapter? Or yes, I shouldn't say other HDMI adapter, an HDMI adapter. Specifically, this one that goes for like $6 on Amazon. From the HDMI mod to this, when do you think I swapped? Okay, I swapped after they scored on me or right before they scored on me. I swapped it 30-0. Could you tell a difference? Probably not. I'm going to swap over back to the HDMI mod and see if you can tell the difference. Could you tell a difference? I genuinely cannot tell the difference. I'll put this in a side-by-side. On the left, we have the internal HDMI mod that we just did. And on the right, we have this cheapo HDMI adapter that just sticks out the side. No modding necessary. Just plug and play, baby. What's the difference? Nothing. I don't think this mod is worth the time and effort or money unless you really want to have it inside instead of on the outside. Am I upset because this mod put me through hell just trying to put it together, just trying to disassemble a Wii, and just trying to get the freaking HDMI to output to my capture card? Yes, but that's exactly the point of what I'm trying to say. It's not worth going through all of that just to have an HDMI mod that doesn't upscale. It's still fine. Don't get me wrong. If you have this installed or you bought this from someone or whatever, if you have this mod, obviously it's fine. It has settings that the adapter doesn't or the Wii U doesn't. But unless you really care about that, it's just not worth it to me. Not saying that you wasted your money. If you're happy with it, you're happy with it. But this is just me sending out a warning flare to anybody who's thinking about this mod. And if this doesn't deter you, great. Soldier on. But for me, I'm never doing this thing again.